Welcome back to the channel. Today's video is finally going to be the start of my mini little, that's what mini means, little series, which is me talking about anime that I love and books that I loved and some books and anime that gave me similar feelings. I'm going to try to keep my thumbs down today, but first, as a kind of honorable mention, because this one doesn't have an anime yet that I'm aware of, I started reading The Fragrant Flower Blooms with Dignity. That is a mouthful title. This is so sweet, and it's so pure and just innocent, but also there's tension between the two characters and the yearning. I love it. I absolutely love it. And it's one thing that I do love about anime, romance anime, is that I feel like that tension and that yearning is really dragged out, because it's not often in anime that you find that they hook up and stuff, you know, especially not on camera, or would it be camera? I guess it's camera. Anyways, so I'm really enjoying this. I have this much left, and I was gonna finish this. This is so easy to read for me because I enjoy it so much. But I went to Barnes to see if I could get the second and third volumes, and they had 4, 5, and 6. So I have to wait for them to get here, and then I will finish, because I know that if I finish this and I don't have volume 2, I'm gonna be like a fiend. I'm gonna be trying to, while I wait for the next one. I don't even know what's coming out of my mouth, because that's all I can think about is the fact that it's out for delivery today. So I should be getting it today. And then I can read volume 2 and 3. And then I gotta get my hands on the rest of them. So yeah, this is really enjoyable. It's kind of like Romeo and Juliet. You have, I think it's Kowaruku? We're done. You have her. She goes to an all-girls school, and basically all the girls that go to that school are from upper class families. That's where they send their girls to learn, right? And then you have Rintaro. Yeah, his name is a little bit easier to say for me. You have Rintaro, who goes to the all-boys school, which is literally across from the all-girls school. But the all-boys school is where problematic boys are sent. And it's just lovely. There is something to be said about the men in anime, and I guess apparently manga too. This is my first one though, so I don't know. But so far, they just are of a different cut, and I like that cut. Whatever it is, I like it. So just an honorable mention. I'm really enjoying this one, and I can't wait to get my hands on the rest of them. But with today's video, the subject of today's video is, I'm gonna start with Attack on Titan. I feel like it's an anime that even if you don't watch anime, but if you run in anime circles or even manga circles, you've heard of Attack on Titan, you will know what I'm talking about. And I feel like that was a good place to start, both for the series and for myself as well, just while I get used to talking about it, because I'm a little shy when it comes to talking about my anime. I haven't watched all the OG, most popular, most long-running anime, and I feel like sometimes people look at me and they're like, you don't really watch anime, and I'm like, what do you mean? I do. I have a Crunchyroll subscription, and I use it more than I use Netflix and Hulu. So, but anyway, so if you are like me and you watch anime but you don't watch I haven't seen One Piece. And that's a really long show, so I don't know when that's gonna happen, if it's gonna happen. If I'm being so for real, I don't know. But I haven't seen that. I did watch Bleach. I watched Bleach every time I put it on, I was braiding my hair. Yeah, because that's the only way I could sit and watch that many episodes of Bleach. But I really liked it. I really did. But anyways, today's topic, I'm off topic already. Today's topic is Attack on Titan. Now, if you have seen Attack on Titan, I don't know if the manga is the same, but I imagine that it is pretty close. If you've seen Attack on Titan, you will know the show is absolute devastation. There is really nothing to be happy about when watching Attack on Titan. There's really nothing to celebrate when watching it. It is I walked away from Attack on Titan when I finally was able to watch it all the way through, because I watched it back in the day, so I had to wait for season 4 to come out, and then I had to wait for season 5 to come out. That's how long ago I found this. When I finally watched Attack on Titan all the way through for the first time, I was left feeling heavy. I was left wondering how it could be that something so sad and so desperate and just so desolate was one of my favorite things in the world. When I tell you that I love Attack on Titan, I love Attack on Titan. I love that shit. I don't care if it's overhyped. I love that show. But it left me like staring at the wall, and I was reeling and spiraling and wondering like there has to be something else after this. Like, where's the happy ending? But it was one of the first times I realized that you don't always have to have a happy ending for something to be good. Like, and now I'm able to read books that don't have happy endings, and I'm like, yeah, I'm cool with this. I like this. I enjoyed that ending, and it matched the story. And that's due in big part to Attack on Titan. So enough yapping. But Attack on Titan, I don't want to talk about it too much because I feel like I might spoil it. But you have Eren, Mikasa, and Armin, and they live in a society that is basically walled in. They live in a society where there's 3 sets of walls, right, to protect them from Titans, which are just like these overly large humanoid. They're fucking terrifying. They're so creepy. They're so creepy in my opinion. It's to protect them from those Titans. Now, if they were to step out of the walls, of course, they would have to fend for themselves. And their military has 3 branches. You have these scouts, who are the ones who go outside of the walls to see if they can maybe reconquer any land, if they can take back any of that from the Titans. So they are the group that suffers the most casualties and the most heartbreak on like a really consistent, constant basis. Then you have the garrison, and they basically just maintain order within the walls. Yeah, that's pretty much all there is to them. They're really not that great in my opinion. I have my feelings and opinions about them, but I can't say anything because it might spoil things for you later on. And then you have the military police, and they are basically just, I don't know, like they're the ones that take care and protect the king. They basically protect nobility and royalty. They don't really care too much about anything else. Now, it's funny because as I'm talking, right, you would think that the scouts are the group that holds the most prestige. They're the ones that are risking themselves day in and day out. In reality, the scouts are basically the bottom of the barrel. They're treated like scum. And it has a lot to do with the fact that they do consume quite a bit of resources. I will say that. They do consume quite a bit of resources, and it just seems like there's never really a payout for for the consumption, right? They come back and it's like everybody's dead every time. It's kind of crazy, I'm not gonna lie. Like, the people that chose to be scouts, props to you, because it could never be me. It could never be me. Put me on a farm. Put me in a kitchen. I'm a cook. But don't ask me to go out there and die. So ultimately you start the show off, and I guess this isn't really like a spoiler because it's in the first episode, but when you start the show, you do have Titans that break through the wall. There were years and years and years and years of peace, and now suddenly you have Titans that are breaking through the walls, and they're absolutely terrifying Titans. They're not run-of-the-mill Titans, right? And that is basically where Attack on Titan starts. But it turns into something so much bigger. When I first watched Attack on Titan, I could only watch up to season 3. That's all that was available at the time, right? And I was thinking, wow, this has escalated to a point where like this could go in any direction that it wants, and it would make sense because that's how large scale it turned. I say it's large scale, but it was like maintained, if that makes sense. At no point in time did it feel like we were just like off course, like just doing whatever came to us. It definitely felt like there was an order to how grand of a story Attack on Titan was turning into. And then when you watch, you know, as I watched and I finished the rest of the show, I was like, oh my God. Yeah, Attack on Titan, right here, I'm ride or die for Attack on Titan. One of my favorite parts of Attack on Titan, one of my favorite aspects about that anime was the characters. When I tell you that there was probably no character that I didn't feel some type of way about, I mean it. When the show ended, I was mourning so many people. I cried so much. And having watched that show so many times, it's a comfort show for me, which that says a lot about me, but we're not talking about me. Having watched it so many times, I can tell you that I pretty much cry every time I watch it. There's never a point where I'm like desensitized to what's going on, and I know what's going to happen. But it just is so impactful, and the way some of those people are lost is kind of like, oh, like, you know, like that's kind of regular, like that's what you expected to happen. But it's the impact that loss had. It just was beautifully done. And the depiction of grief, but having to power through your grief because you need to survive, I could not fathom being a scout and having to deal with that. So anyways, that's one of my favorite aspects of Attack on Titan. And the other part that I genuinely liked is where the story went. I feel, in my opinion, the story of Attack on Titan, it went whoop. And I was strapped in for the ride. I was ready to go. I was like, hey, yo, I'm here. Let's go. I was ready. So the books that I'm going to mention are books that I feel like came really close to that. In all honesty and in fairness to the books that I'm going to talk about, nothing will ever, ever touch Attack on Titan for me. I don't even know if I were to read the manga, I don't know that I would be as impacted as I was by watching the show. Mostly because it was one of the first animes that I watched and connected to this degree, but also it just evoked so many emotions out of me from start to finish. And it was a range. It wasn't like I was sad the whole time. I laughed a few times. I cried. I thought that certain things were silly. I thought certain things were really fucking dumb. And then I was like, oh my God, but is it me? It was so well done and so well rounded. Like there's no sharp edges besides the pain that you're gonna go through. I was gonna say there's no sharp edges to Attack on Titan. It's like a very well formed, story. But let me tell you something. If you don't cry watching Attack on Titan, there is something wrong with you. There's something wrong with you. I was ugly crying for the majority of that show. But anyways, I digress. So some of the books I wanted to talk about. I'm gonna start with the one that I feel like I drew the least amount of parallels, but there were still parallels there. And that is gonna be the Gearbreakers duology. Sorry. I have to remember that when you guys see it, they're opposite of how I see it. But anyway, so we have the Gearbreakers duology. Gearbreakers, second book is Godslayers. In my opinion, these are very different stories, even though they are a connected duology. I feel like Gearbreakers was a little bit more lighthearted, was a little bit more of that like kind of stereotypical YA that people think of, right? But then you got into Godslayers and this was devastating. This was like, whoa. It took a very sharp turn, but the book that stood out the most to me when I, was reading it and it did actually evoke some of those same emotions that Attack on Titan did was Godslayers. I think it's because you have kids, they're kids. In this and Attack on Titan, they're teenagers, right? Like you watch these kids go from children to young adults and the entire time they are fighting what to them is a global war. Like they are fighting a war that is going to determine whether their world will still exist at the end of this war. And the same kind of goes for Godslayers. Again, Gearbreakers is where the war starts, right? But Gearbreakers I think is more focused on the characters and like those budding relationships between them. I feel like Godslayers, a much more big picture type of story where we're now focused on how the war is affecting the people around them and how they are fighting the war and how they're going to win the war, blah, 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 all of that. I think Godslayers is a little bit closer to Attack on Titan in that sense because I was reading about children who are stepping into these mechanical war machines, right? They are risking their lives. In wartime, there is no good or bad, right? There is no, oh, she's a good person, he's a bad person. There is no, that's right, oh, that's wrong. It literally is just about fighting to survive, fighting to have a legacy to pass on. I think in this, you just get a little bit closer to realizing what motivates certain people to fight for certain things. And how even when you're on one side, you're still straddling the line. Because at no point in time did any of these characters, whether it be in the book or whether it be in the show, at no point in time were they wholly good or wholly bad. They were simply reacting to their environment. They were reacting to the conflict that they were facing. And I think that's really, it's gonna sound weird, but I think that's really beautiful because we as humans, I don't think that we're entirely bad and we're entirely good. I think that we are simply reacting to what's going on around us, and it's based on what we have consumed up to that point, right? How we have perceived our world, how we've been treated by our world will then dictate how we react to our world. And that's a parallel that I was able to draw between Attack on Titan, the characters, and Godslayer, the story. I think when it comes to characters, you could maybe draw a parallel between Enyo in Godslayers, who, he's this young kid who is somehow supposed to rule over this group of people, the majority of them adults, by the way, and Eren in Attack on Titan, where I think he was a little bit more self-serving, Eren. I think that he was a little bit more selfish in his actions, but at the end of the day, he did have what he thought was a very good reason for behaving in such a way. I think the two of them, maybe you could draw parallels, but again, the fact that Enya was a little bit more selfless, kind of just, that's where I disconnected the two, because they're very far on this, like they're very at the opposite ends of the spectrum, in my opinion. Now, for the second book that I would recommend if you liked Attack on Titan, I just want to forewarn you, the book is 5 stars. No question about it, in my opinion. The book is 5 stars. It was beautifully written. I hated this book. I hated the book. I hated how heavy I felt during and after. It was the similar feeling that I had when I finished Attack on Titan, just that like exhaustion. Like you really were put through the ringer and you come out of it and you're just so tired. That is how Blood Over Brighthaven made me feel. I wasn't even done with the book and I was already tired, because the main character, in my opinion, is exhausting. She's an exhausting perspective to sit in, and the story is from her perspective. So it was a lot. I'm literally like at a loss for words, and this book is heavy. I'll put it up here somewhere. It was just heavy. It was heavy. It's the first time I read a book from the oppressor's point of view, where like I'm pretty much in her perspective the entire time. That was the first time I experienced that. And I had a really hard time with it because the book deals with racism and misogyny. And while the main female character is trying to break into an all-male workforce, which is the mages, I guess we'll say, you know, part of me was like, oh, I'm gonna root for her because she's trying to break into the boys club. And I like that. We like to break into the boys club. But then I heard how she spoke of another marginalized community, which is the Quen. And I was like, yo, this bitch is awful. I literally had the hardest time stomaching Siona. I hated her inner monologue. I absolutely detested her interactions with Tamil. And even when she has that like shift in personality, it still was just, it was too little too late for me. But I think that for people that felt the same way about Eren, you might enjoy Blood Over Brighthaven. You might enjoy getting a story from the point of view of kind of like the villain, pretty much, in my opinion. The biggest parallel between Blood Over Brighthaven and Attack on Titan for me, like it's something that popped into my head while I was reading Blood Over Brighthaven, was the magic system for Blood Over Brighthaven. A magic system that comes at a very high cost to the Quen. And because I don't remember what Siona's part of society is called. I can't remember what Siona's society, her people are called. But anyways, you have Siona's people who are the upper class, let's say that. They are willing to ignore the cost of the magic. The people that just exist within her community, they have no clue. And it was quite interesting to see their reactions once they did become aware. I will say that. Blood Over Brighthaven was a very like hopeless book for me. And I don't want to give it's really hard to talk about things without going into too much detail because I want more people to watch Attack on Titan. I am selfishly doing this in the hopes that somebody out there will be like, I'm gonna watch Attack on Titan now. Attack on Titan has a somewhat similar concept, right? There is a reason why there are Titans, and the reason why there are Titans is absolutely horrifying. That's the point. So you have how the Titans are created and who they are and how absolutely disgusting, quite frankly, it is. That just directly compares to Siona's magic system. The magic system of Blood Over Brighthaven. Excuse me, it's not her magic system, but and the cost of that magic. The way that they were done very differently, mind you, Attack on Titan is 5 seasons. Blood Over Brighthaven is a standalone novel, and I think it's like less than 500 pages. It was very interesting to see how the two stories played out, because at the end, neither has a happy ending. Neither has a happy ending, but both have the ending that fit that story so well, which just speaks to the writers, in my opinion. They are fantastic. But Blood Over Brighthaven will definitely give you that, like, for me, it was like an icky feeling. I got like an icky feeling. The only difference is I'm willing to go to bat for Eren. I will go to bat for him because he went through so much. He went through so much. How could you see him, watch him go through all of that and not expect him to be morphed by it, you know? Whereas Siona, was just insufferable. She was just insufferable. And her behaviors had no excuse. They had nothing for me. Both of them are selfish. I think Siona she could be perceived as a little bit selfless because of her actions once she has that personality shift, which is why you had to have the ending that you had. I don't know if that makes sense without you having read or watched one or the other, but I just felt like how they ended both the anime and the story was perfect. That's all I'm gonna say. Because I feel like if I keep talking, which I definitely could, I'm gonna spoil Blood Over Brighthaven. And I don't want to do that because if there is somebody out there that wants to read it, I really think you should. It's really, really good. It is a difficult ass book. I struggled. I don't know. I saw a lot of people review Blood Over Brighthaven and it sounded like they were having fun. And I'm like, what book were you reading? Because I was literally choking the whole time. I was like, this is suffocating. It was awful. I never want to see that book again in my life. I won't get rid of it though because it's gorgeous. I mean, look at it. That's a gorgeous book. I got the one with the sprayed edges too. This was my first ML. Nope, we're not gonna get distracted. I needed a water break. This is actually collagen, not water. For the last book that I think you could draw parallels between Attack on Titan and the book. I do have to be honest and let you know, I haven't finished the series. So I can't speak for the rest of the books, but Mistborn, this is Mistborn Era 1, Book 1. The start of the Mistborn. I said that in 3 different ways and I don't know why. Mistborn is, I think, a book that you could probably draw the most parallels to Attack on Titan. I think the only 2 characters the only character that I said, oh, Attack on Titan, was Kelsier. I think his motivations behind the heist, there we go. I didn't want to ruin it. Behind the heist that he is trying to execute, right? I think his motivations and the things he's willing to do to accomplish that heist they gave Eren. I was like, you're terrifying. Kelsier was so scary to me, especially because Kelsier was very charismatic. I don't think that Eren was as charismatic, in my opinion, as Kelsier. Kelsier would have convinced me to go swimming, and I don't know how to swim. And then Vin. I feel like Vin and Mikasa kind of gave me the same vibe in the sense of they're both following somebody that they care about quite a bit. They're following them into the trenches, and the difference being that Mikasa was hard ass, she was badass, and Vin I think was a little bit less of that, physically speaking. But both women are following these men into the trenches, into the depths of the catastrophe they're about to set off. They just did it so wholeheartedly. There was a point where I was sure that Vin was going to back off and kind of leave Kelsier on his own. I definitely thought she was going to leave the group, but at no point she did. And I was like, oh wow, like that's commitment. Same thing with Mikasa. Like there were several moments watching and I was like, girl, you gotta leave him. Like he is trouble with a capital T. But she like stuck through it. She was committed, and I respect that in both of those characters. Now, when it comes to Kelsier and Eren and drawing parallels between the two, I think that they were both quite selfish. They were both quite self-interested. They kind of both had blinders on, and they were only willing to see what they wanted to see and how they thought they should accomplish something. But they were also they were willing to sacrifice so much as well. And they did love the people that they loved. They loved them wholeheartedly. It's just those blinders did not let them see past that goal, right? That goal that they thought, that they felt they had to achieve. Like, no questions about it. That rigidness in the two of them, I think, is what led to their eventual kind of downfall. It kind of led to their downfall, in my opinion. But it was a downfall that I didn't celebrate. I didn't celebrate either of their failures. I said that really wrong the first time. That's crazy. I finished book 1. I finished the show. I am still rooting for Kelsier and Eren. I am still ride or die for them. So I feel like you had the most comparisons between characters in the book and the show. There was also a lot of side characters in Mistborn, not as many as Attack on Titan had. Attack on Titan had like the main cast of side characters, but then it had this like entirely other group of side characters, and it was a lot of characters to follow, but I can tell you I had feelings about all of them. I had feelings about all the characters in Attack on Titan. And the same thing goes for Mistborn. There were so many characters, a little bit less of course, but there were a lot of characters and I had feelings about all of them. I wished and wanted and rooted for and a lot of characters, all of them pretty much. So I think that the way those two stories are written, especially considering the mediums in which they're presented, is fucking crazy to me how you could write so many different characters, side characters, people who get maybe like a page here and there or a few minutes here and there, and I'm connecting to them. I'm deciding how I feel about them. I think that's a parallel, maybe not directly like story to story, but just in the ability of these artists to create these storylines, this writing where you can do that with words, right? Another parallel that I drew between Eren and Kelsier, of course, is kind of like the idea of a hero. Both of them were idolized. I think that they were written and came off as the hero of the story. However, as you continue to consume their story, you realize Eren and Kelsier are very flawed. They're very flawed, but like in a very natural way. You know, they did things and said things, treated people in ways that would earn you like a real nice cutoff. Like, we're done at this point. I don't want anything to do with you. Both of them behaved in such a manner. However, both of them still embodied that idea of a hero to me. I still consumed their stories and their personalities, and I still was like, I'm still rooting for them, even though they did some real questionable things. It was still quite easy, in my opinion, to want the best for them and to kind of want them to achieve their end goals, even though I knew their end goals maybe weren't the best. I knew that. Where Kelsier was charismatic outwardly, I think Eren was internally charismatic. Like, he made me feel for him based on his story. Kelsier made me feel for him based on his attitude after his trauma, right? But both males in this case, they did embody the very flawed, very morally gray hero, I think, that we often see in stories. And sometimes it's hard to balance that like hero personality that is expected to be good, do good, be for the people, right? Against that flawed, very real human who is not entirely all good or bad. Both characters were written really well, morally gray, but still, they were still my hero, quite frankly. I don't know what that says about me. Their motivations were very similar. They were both motivated by revenge or avenging. Eren wanted to avenge his mother's death. He wanted revenge for that fear that he and his people had to constantly exist in. They knew nothing else but that fear. He wanted revenge for that. And once he knew who he could get that revenge on, that was like all he could see. Again, those blinders. Kelsier is a man who wants to avenge his wife, but he also wants revenge on this upper class who has subjugated and kept his people, he perceives, in fear, right? Living in the underbelly of society. But the thing is, right, their methods for wanting to achieve that vengeance is questionable. It's questionable, and unfortunately, there's a lot of collateral damage. And I think that because of those blinders, again, the two of them just are like horses with blinders, and I think horses can still like turn their head, right? But because of those blinders, both Kelsier and Eren, they committed a lot of atrocities, and it was a lot of collateral damage sustained in both stories, in my opinion. I think Attack on Titan, because again, it has like a longer time to show you the end results of everything, right? Mistborn, I mean, I haven't gotten to the Wall of Ascension, but in Mistborn, it's kind of a little bit more reduced because you just have that one book. But in that one book, there was that sense of collateral damage. It was still there. It wasn't as impactful, I think, because it was such a shorter book, but it was still there. Those are the majority of my parallels between the two main characters, in my opinion. But yeah, that's what I have for you today. That was exhausting, and I only say that because, again, Attack on Titan, it was a very draining show for me. I absolutely love it. I have two favorite animes, and no one can ever take those from me. I will never change my mind, and they are Attack on Titan and Fruits Basket. And I can tell you, Attack on Titan was draining. It was exhausting. It will, if you consume the show wholeheartedly, it will leave you feeling very lethargic afterwards. Very, just like you've been through a really long day and you don't see the end in sight. That is how I felt after watching Attack on Titan. But I started the show being devastated by the loss of Aaron's mom and the Titans breaking through the wall and just destroying any sense of peace those people could have, right? And so we started off there. It wasn't a great place to start, but that's where we started. And I didn't really end that much better. But throughout there, like throughout those episodes, oh my God, it was a roller coaster. It was a constant emotional roller coaster of being devastated, being desperate, being scared, being annoyed, being happy, laughing, crying. I did so much crying. And I've watched the show from season 1 to 5 like 4 more times. And I still just am constantly losing my mind. And every time I watch it, I pick up on new things, right? Smaller things that I missed the first time or the second time or the third time because I was focused on bigger things. But as I keep watching, I start to focus in on the smaller things every time. And I'm like, this show is a masterpiece. Attack on Titan is a masterpiece. And I honestly want to read the manga, but when I was at Barnes, she had like 50 volumes. I was looking at them and they were looking back at me and I said, whoa, you can't all come home with me. It was a lot of volumes. They didn't have 1 and 3. They had like, yeah, they had like a weird number, but the last number I saw, I think was like 34 maybe. So I don't know if it goes past that, but it was a lot of volumes, which is why I didn't grab it and they didn't have the first one. But all the books I mentioned, absolutely love them. They're all 5 stars for me. Godslayers, which is book 2 in that Gearbreakers duology. That one I gave 4.5 stars just because I felt like the stories kind of disconnected from each other. It was weird, but those are all fantastic reads in my opinion. And even if you don't watch Attack on Titan, they are just fantastic because it's not like I picked those books up and I was like, I want Attack on Titan. I just was reading them. And as I was reading them, I was having moments where I was like, oh shit, like that kind of reminds me of this. So yeah, books I would recommend. And if you are interested in anime and you haven't watched Attack on Titan yet and you are okay with being emotionally plowed through, I would definitely recommend Attack on Titan. It's really good. It's a really good show. I went on way too long, but fear not. The next ones I will try to like reduce a little bit more. Can't lie to you though. I get really excited when I get to talk about these things, like things that I really love, but I don't really have anybody else to talk to. So you two, you guys are my sounding board for this. But anyways, I will see you guys for the next video. And as always, happy reading and or watching this time.